Hey, everybody. Do you notice what's happening? Every time we come into the room, half of the room changes. The person changes that I talk to. I remain the same, but the people that come in change. The background behind them changes. The things that the situations that they bring into the room change. And what an amazing opportunity this has been for me to be able to talk to hundreds of people now that I never even knew existed a month and a half ago, that come in as strangers and so often leave as friends. It's remarkable to me how that happens. And I wonder, in a world that we live in where it's full of strangers, when we live with a world full of strangers, it's a strange world we live in. But when we live in a world full of friends, it becomes a friendlier world. It becomes a friendly world that we live in. And I wonder if the world in general doesn't need a friendlier world right now. So I love what's happening through these conversations, what's going on. I do have to take a moment, pardon me, for just to acknowledge the sponsor of our show. It's with honor and that I love it. It's the people that are sponsoring the show are the ones that published my book, The Mosaic. And there's a reason for it, because The Mosaic is a story about a boy who loses his parents 2 years apart on the same day. And when he asks the adults where his parents are, they tell him they're in a place called heaven. So he sets out in search of the place called heaven. And he does exactly what the show is doing. He talks to strangers. And he wants to know where heaven is. And the people he meets, though, are not the clergy and the holy men and the rabbis and the ministers and the swamis and the gurus. He meets the common ordinary people. He meets the trash man and the road worker and the homeless guy and the blind woman. And when he wonders, why am I sitting with these people? What he sees is that he's there, so why not just sit and listen to them tell their stories? When he does that, the person that he's sitting with no longer is the person that he came up to. And it's not because that person's changed, it's because he's changed. The perception he had when he came up to him is completely different than the perception he has now that he's taken a few moments to get to know them. That's what happens in this room. We come in with perceptions. That's what happens in this room called our world. We come in with perceptions of how people are because they're on this side of the fence or that side of the fence, because they live at this border, because their color of the skin is this way or that way, because they practice this religion or that religion, because they have this much money or that much money. But when we take time to sit with somebody and listen to their story, we can't help but become friends with them. With that said, I've honored my obligation. If you like the idea of the book, please go to Amazon and get it. That will make my sponsors very happy. And pick up a copy of it and read it. I would be delighted to know that you've done that, and I would love to know what you feel and how you experience it. But that is not why we're in this room right now. That's the people that are sponsoring the room. Why we're in this room right now is to have an opportunity for both of us at the same time, everybody listening and myself too, to meet this beautiful man in front of me, whose name is Reid Messerschmidt. Did I get it right? I hope I got it right.
Yeah, you got it exactly right.
I love that. Reid, thank you for that, and welcome to the conversation. How are you today?
I am doing so well. I am so excited to be here with you.
I love that. You know, every once in a while, someone says they're excited to be here with me, and I wonder, why are you so excited? Like, what is that? What is it that you feel that is your excitement in being here and talking to an imperfect stranger like myself?
You have a unique energy, um, uh, and I just in a more general sense, I just like doing the same thing that you like doing. I like talking to new people and experiencing new things, and this is that.
I love that. I what I love so often is it takes about 10 seconds for us for me in this room to sit with somebody and see what we already share. And in a world
Yeah.
where we so often point out our differences, I love that within 10 seconds we can say, boy, I love doing just what you're doing, and I do the same thing. I love that. Tell us who you are and what you do and what's important to you.
Yeah, my name is Reid Messerschmidt. Like you said, I live in Fargo, North Dakota, United States of America. I have two sons, Otis and Ezra. I have a wife, Kelly. Uh, and I make a podcast called Irrationally Exuberant. And I that's it. That's the gist of it. That's the Cliff Notes version.
I
We'll
love
get
that.
to the rest eventually, I imagine.
I love that. Just a footnote for me. I would love to, if it turns out to be relevant, I would love to be on your podcast as well. What a great thing! Because I feel you already. I would like to be, if we can, I'd love to do that. So we can talk under cover later.
Absolutely.
Um, what's important to you?
What is important to me? My kids are important to me, and self-knowledge is important to me, and knowledge in general, I think, comes in third. Um, that's it. That's what's important to me. That's what I think about all day. That is what I strive to do, to help, to be a good father
Yeah.
first and foremost, and to learn.
I remember years and years and years ago when I was in rabbinical school. One of the people, one of my dearest friends, had gotten married and had his first child. And he looked at me and he said, "Danny, I thought I knew what love was when I got married, but
Yeah.
I had no idea what love was until I had this baby. Every other love that I've had has been a learned love. This is an instinctual love, and the moment she came out, I just fell in love with her."
I mean, it's an insane amount of love, and it's like it's an evolving love, but it doesn't evolve in the same way that a relationship kind of love does, like a male female or male male or whatever your preference is. it's it just evolves upwards. I feel
Yeah,
like it's
yeah,
it's on an upward, it's just a straight line upward.
yeah.
You're just constantly learning who they are, who you are, and it's every day I just love them more.
You can feel that. Listeners, you're listening. Can you feel how he doesn't have to say it? His whole everything in his demeanor, everything in his being, can show you that and how beautiful that is. Um, and in a world we live in, where I hear so many tragic stories of how kids have been brought into this world, and there's abuse, and there's people left behind, and things that are happening. It's so nice to see a dad who loves his kids, and not that other people don't love their kids too, but that just is there for them in the way that we grew up, that I used to grow up. I'm from a different generation than you are, but we grew up, and you probably don't even remember the names of this, but in an Ozzie and Harriet sort of lifestyle. It was a
Right.
television show, right, where it was
Mm-hmm.
just, there was wholesomeness, and my dad worked as hard as he possibly could and didn't do very well. He couldn't make very much money, but he would come around the dinner table. My mom always had dinner for us, always had something for us to eat. We'd sit there and laugh and just be with each other and talk to each other about the days. And so often I look at life now and don't see that. What do you do to maintain that sort of life in your family?
I just try to be as open as possible. You know, my parents were not exactly that way. My father, especially, was, he's very competition based person and very angry in general.
Mm.
My mom, not so much. Um, but they didn't like each other.
Wow.
And it made for a tense environment. And I think I realized pretty quickly, probably around 12, that neither one of them was going to be a tenable role model. Like I was going to
Wow.
have to look elsewhere to find the model of how I wanted to be as a person.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I've worked really hard at that, and I want to be. I don't want my kids to have to look elsewhere, and I want to like grow with them and help them grow, and just be have a real human being relationship with my children.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I work towards all the time.
So I want to ask those of you who are listening who have children, what do you hear when Reid's speaking right now? Do you have a human being relationship with your kids? I know so many of us want to have that. So many of us would always say that's our ideal. But are you letting other things get in the way of that? Do you allow yourself to grow with your kids? These are not just conversations I'm having in a room with a stranger. These are conversations that you're involved in too as a listener. And take heed from it. Um, and if there's something you like in the stranger that I'm talking to, connect with them. All their information will be in the show notes that we have. Reach out to them and sort of talk to them about how they're doing, what they're doing. How beautiful. What's most important to you?
Most important is, I mean, my kids. We're going to keep coming back to that because that's the thing. But I think just being a decent, thinking, evolving person
Yeah,
is important to me, and that kind of encompasses everything.
I love that. And what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? Um, I love creating. That makes me very happy. I love learning. That makes me very happy. I love nothing more than I love nothing more than finding a topic that I can just squeeze the life out of, I
Yeah,
could dig in so far that I just get the whole thing. And then applying that to my life, taking little bits and pieces from all over the place and trying to apply that to my life. And, spending time with my kids, that makes me happy. Bedtime is the best time of the day because me and my 5-year-old just talk. We'll read a book and then we'll talk, and that's the happiest time of the day typically.
I love that. Give me an idea of something that you've squeezed the life out of and have gotten
Oh,
knowledge from.
everything. Oh. um I would say that probably the thing I've gotten most out of, and this is because I am an alcoholic and have been sober for coming on 7 years,
Congratulations.
that I've really dug into sobriety and thinking about sobriety and thinking about living a sober life. And I dig into that all. I mean, I will read anything about sobriety, and there's so much to pull out of there. I think even for people that don't have drinking problems, there
Yeah.
is addiction in everything. I mean, it's the Buddhist principle, right? Like that your attachment is the cause of all suffering, right?
Yes.
So, to think about that and where your attachments lie is, I think, extremely valuable.
What gave you the courage to go sober?
My wife, for sure. Um, we had been married for just about, I mean, right when we got married, as I was not doing well. It had really amped up. I'd gotten on Zoloft, anti-anxiety kind of medication, and turns out that Zoloft and alcohol don't go great together.
Hmm.
Makes you pretty manic. I was pretty manic
Wow.
for the first few months of our marriage, and it wasn't going to work. I mean, she just couldn't. It's not a situation that she could have stayed in. And she was like, at one day she was like, you know what? I'm not crying anymore, and that's a bad sign for you. And
Wow.
I was like, well, I need to. I mean, if I don't quit, then I'm going to lose this, and lose. I can't lose this.
Yeah.
So I quit. It wasn't easy, but that is what did it.
So what gave you the strength? Because I'm sure there are people that are listening that are addicted to something right now,
Mm-hmm.
and that are trying to fight that battle,
Yeah.
um, and that are winning sometimes and falling down sometimes because that's what addictions do. You know better than I,
Right.
most likely. what what gave you the strength in those moments when you were about to fall down to stay up, or to get back up again, or to do that because it's not easy. It's changing behavior patterns. It's changing the way we think, and
Changes
what
everything.
it changes everything. So,
Everything.
and we don't like to change everything. Most of us. Most of us are pretty comfortable in the sameness of the way we live our life.
Right.
So, what gave you that? Where did you find that power and that strength? And I know you said your wife said she couldn't take it anymore, and you didn't want to lose her, but there has to be something inside yourself that you
Yeah.
found.
I would say that the number one thing about sobriety that I don't feel like is mentioned very often
Beautiful.
is that it opens up a lot of time. It opens up a lot of free time. And the key, in my opinion and in my experience, to staying sober is to finding a constructive way to fill up that time. Because all of a sudden you've got mornings. Oh, mornings. What are those? You're like conscious and alive in the morning, and nights. You're not. It's just so much time opens up in front of you.
Yeah.
And for me, while I was drinking through all of my 20s, while I was really drinking, I did what I think a lot of people like me do, semi-creative people. Had kind of I called myself a writer. I said I'm a writer, right? Because you can glom on to this writer stereotype of like the Hemingways and the Bukowskis and the Kerouacs, and I mean the list is endless of these guys that were fairly brilliant but ruined their lives with addiction and made that part of their thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it turns out that those guys were always miserable and nobody liked them. So I mean, you just have to remind yourself of that. That it didn't turn out well for any of those gentlemen. So once I got sober, I was like, this is my chance to actually be the thing that I was saying that I was during that whole thing. So I started doing my podcast, and it's scripted. So I just writing and writing and writing. I was making 40-page scripts for each one of these things, and I wrote like 16 of them. So it took all of my free time, and that's what I did. That's where it came. The strength, I think, came from. I filled up that time with something that I had wanted to do and should have been doing the entire time. And that's what did it.
Why do you think you should have been doing it the whole time, as opposed to now you're doing it and it's what you're doing?
It was in me the whole time. I had the capability to do it the whole time.
Yeah.
I could have been developing it for longer. I don't regret not doing it. I don't regret anything. It was all an experience, and I feel good about where I am now. But I could have gotten a lot done.
Yeah.
In that time.
I guess there's just a part of me that hears the beauty of your journey, and beauty is an odd word to use because I know how painful it was, right? But now that we're on the other side of it, the beauty of your journey, of where you had to go through to get to where you are, and how strong you are in the place that you're at. And so oftentimes I hear people say, I should have done, and I think that without, like, look at the world we're living in right now.
Right.
They're so easy to say there's certain things that should not be happening. But what if everything is happening just the way it's supposed to happen in order for us to become who we have to become? And what if all that you've gone through, you couldn't be where you are now if you hadn't gone through it?
I absolutely agree. I mean, I say should have, but that's more of a, like, from a probably an objective standpoint, right? Like anybody watching, be like, you should be not doing this and doing something else. Right. This is harmful to you and everyone around you. But from my own experience, I mean, it is an experience, and I'm happy for it. It all turned out okay.
Yeah,
and I had a lot of interesting times. It wasn't all.
totally.
I mean, a lot of it was miserable, but I also had I also have stories to tell, and
Absolutely.
interesting stories, and stories that I can tell where people are like, oh my God, I cannot believe that happened. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm happy.
The
I'm proud of it.
Kerouacs of the world didn't become cult heroes because they didn't have uninteresting stories to tell. Their life may have been falling apart, but those
Right.
stories that they wrote about and the interest as a human being from the experiences they went through are certainly interesting, right?
They did pull something valuable out of it. Yeah, every
Yeah.
one of them.
Yeah.
Even Bukowski managed to pull a couple of good poems out of that thing. So I, um, so yeah, there's value in all of it for sure.
Totally. Let's change it up a little bit.
Sure.
I am I suck at lightning rounds, but let's try it. You'll see that I'm too curious to have a lightning round happen. But the first questions we'll get started. It'll be pretty easy. Dogs or cats?
I guess cats, if it comes down to it.
Wow. Coffee or tea?
I'm a coffee man.
Would you say you're conservative or liberal?
Liberal.
Would you say you're shy or outgoing?
I am a introverted, outgoing person.
Talk to me because I bet there's some people that are listening going, darn, that's exactly what
Well,
I am.
yeah,
Tell
I
me.
mean, there are people that pull energy out of human interactions, that are energized by human interaction, and there are people that are not, that are drained by human interaction. And I like human interaction. I need it. I can talk a lot, but I don't pull energy from it. Generally speaking, I need I need a lot of alone time. I
Yeah.
can definitely go into a social situation and be the focus if I decide that's what I want to do. But I'm drained afterward.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Do you tend to talk more or listen more?
I think I'm getting. I think that's changing. I think I listen more now.
Wow.
Through my 20s, I didn't stop talking.
What for those people again, there's so many people who talk more than they listen and want to learn how to listen more. What changed for you that allowed you to start listening more?
Oh, I just got tired of hearing myself talk. I think. I mean, I still like to hear myself talk. Obviously, we both, we're in a media where we record our own voices. There's
Right.
a certain amount of narcissism involved in that. But yeah, I just got, I know everything. I think for the most part. Sometimes you surprise yourself when you start talking.
Yeah.
But um, it comes time when you have to just you just you spend so much time with yourself, right? You just spend all your
Yeah.
time with yourself, regardless of where you are, who you're with, and it's just how long can that be entertaining?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's one place that you surprised yourself by talking that you didn't know you knew about yourself? Is there any place that you've done that?
I'm not sure it's like a self-knowledge thing so much as just like clarifying ideas that you already have. Um, I mean, that's the beauty of like a collaboration. It's just the melding of two people's ideas just sparks back and forth.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I can just surprise myself with like something witty that comes out of my mouth that I didn't think about 10 seconds before, yeah, you can just kind of work stuff out.
I like that.
Yeah,
Have you always felt like you fit into the world, or have you always felt you're a little bit different?
different. Yeah.
I'm always shocked. I can't, and I say it every conversation that I'm in. People answer that they feel different, and I'm still always shocked by it because I always thought that people would say they fit into the world because we try so hard. It seems to fit into a world, and why would we do that if we feel that we're different from the world that we are trying so hard to fit into? Why do you think people who are different try so hard to fit into the world?
Because from a an outside view, it seems easier, right? You see people, you don't know their internal life. And it
Yep.
seems like they're more easily fitting into the world, and it seems like their life is easier because of it.
Yeah.
But nobody feel no, I don't, like you said, I don't think anybody actually feels like they're of the world exactly. Everybody feels unique and misunderstood to a degree, some
Yeah.
degree. But you don't see that. I mean, literally everything that you see is just a snapshot, right? None of it. The only continuous line that you have is is your own internal life. That's the only continuous line you have access to,
I
right?
love
So,
that
uh,
statement.
I mean, you watch, like, I was feeling extremely frustrated with, like, commercials not too long ago, and thinking, like, what is wrong with these commercials? Why are they so off-putting to me? Why do they make people feel so bad about their own lives? And it's because it's these tiny snapshots. It's like this 1-second snapshot of a perfect moment in a fictional person's life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you extend beyond that, if you use your imagination and extend beyond that moment, even that person is, you know, the next moment is somebody yelling cut, and then they're like, smile goes away,
Right.
right? So you
Right.
can't hold your entire internal through line to a snapshot of somebody else's perfect moment.
So hold it a minute. Are you actually saying that if I use a certain detergent, I'm not going to be more happy than I was than than I am?
I'm, I mean, your clothes might be a little softer. I don't know. Maybe you'll be a 100th of a % happier for a moment.
I love that. But and I love what you're saying because even applied to social media, oftentimes people show just a snapshot of their happy moment of that day when
Right.
maybe the whole rest of the day they were feeling lousy, but they want to put on a good veneer for the world to show that we're doing good. Why do you think it's so important for us to show ourselves not like we are, but better than we are?
Mm, I mean, you want people you want people to admire you to an extent, I think. I think social media has exacerbated that a lot. Like, the desire to be admired is just kind of overwhelming sometimes, I guess. Um, yeah, you, it's just easier, I think. I mean, if you projected, I do know people that project all these are always talking about the ugly side of their life, and those
Yeah,
people are just as exhausting as the people that are always showing the positive side of their life. It's
yeah,
exhausting. I mean, it's so much false interaction, and no matter what side of themselves somebody is showing, a lot. It's a lot to deal with.
yes, I
Um,
completely understand.
yeah.
So I know in my social media inputs, I try my very best to show up the way I am as a human being. I show
Hmm.
the things that I suck at, the things, my foibles. I show the things that I feel great about in my life. Like I really like the human being that I am, and there's some parts of me that are still are a big work in progress or
Right.
process. But what do you think it is that makes us want to show up other than we are? It's not that we want to show up like all our negativity or all our trials and all the troubles that we have or all the happiness that we have. There's a place in the middle that says this is who I am. Sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
Why can't we just, what in the world doesn't permit us to just show up and be ourselves?
I think part of it is the way I would liken it to, like, how you see yourself in the mirror versus how you look in a picture, right?
Mm.
And to look, you want people to see what you see in a mirror, I think, a lot of times. But it's hard to get that across, right? Because every time you see a picture of yourself, a candid picture of yourself, like, that's not what I see when I look in the mirror. That is a different That is a different person. But you want to somehow get across to other people what you are seeing in the mirror, you know, your idealized internal real self, you know. That's what you want people to see. And you know, I think people try to do that by being as appealing as possible online.
It's so interesting because even the image that you bring up of a mirror, it's actually a reversed image of what
Right.
we have, right? So what we see, we don't even get to see ourselves the way we are. We see a reversed image of what we are when we look at ourselves, and a camera captures us the way we are. In my book, The Mosaic, one of the interesting characters that I love is the mirror maker. And
Ooh.
Mo is walking, trying to find heaven, and he's walking through this village, and he sees this store that's open when none of the other stores are open, and he thinks, well, I'll just go into the store because I haven't seen people in a long time. I'll see if I can see somebody, because he's been wandering and, you know, on his own. And he walks into the store and he goes, hello, hello, and nobody answers. And it's a store full of mirrors.
Right.
So all he sees is mirror reflections of things that are mirror reflections of other things. And he thinks, well, why? Like, so if the person's taking a break, let him take a break. I'm walking. I'm not going to buy a mirror. I just wanted to come in here to sort of experience people and see what I see. So he walks around and he looks at the different mirrors, and he finds this one mirror that just intoxicates him. It's made of brass, but it's polished so fine that it reflects back to him an image. And the way the light shines on it, he sees himself in a way he's never seen himself. And at that moment, the mirror maker comes up behind him, and she says to him, I see you found the mirror you like. Tell me what you see. And
Wow.
he starts to tell her what he sees in the mirror, which is all his stories, all himself. And she says, I'm sorry, I didn't ask you the question the way I meant to ask you the question. I'm not really asking what you see when you look in the mirror. I want to know what the mirror sees when it looks at you. It doesn't know all your stories.
Right.
What would you see? What does the mirror see in you when you don't have any, when it doesn't know any of your stories? Can you tell me what it sees? And he said, I'd have to spend time with that. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I love that idea of really doing mirror work, because so many times mirror work is looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, or I when we have difficulty, and that's hard to do.
Yeah.
But what do you think the mirror would see of you if it didn't know any of your stories?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the time in the mirror that people spend in the mirror is vanity. And, you know, like that vanity is not like, oh, I look great. Vanity is just self-consciousness, right? It's like thinking about how you project, or how you are perceived, positive and negative, right? I mean, I think the mirror just sees a person. I just think, you know, it's just a human being. I'm not sure there's anything. I I hesitate to say that, you know, get into the whole you can't judge a book by its cover, because I think you can sometimes. But
Yeah.
there are clues. There are clues. Yeah, I mean, you can't broadly do that, but yeah, there are certainly clues that can be taken. Um, yeah, just a human being that's living life, I guess. I don't have anything profound about this one.
So I guess, and I'll try one more time, and you can. I gave you the right to in the green room to say I don't want to answer that question. You can answer that
Yep,
question.
pass.
So should I try one more time, or should we just pass?
Do what you want to do. Yeah, you can try
Okay.
another time if you want.
Um, who would you be without your stories?
Oh man, that is hard. That's a hard question. I just feel like such a conglomeration of my past and the ways that I've thought about the things that have happened in my life. Um, I mean, I tried to do this thing not long ago where I would make a quick note of every single memory I
Wow.
could I could come up with, every starting at the very earliest thing, and just every detail, it would be a one sentence about what I could remember from my life. And um that's hard. That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
Not it's not necessarily emotionally jarring, but it's just like you really got to dig into your own brain. I'm glad I tried to do it. I don't it didn't last very long. You know,
Yeah.
once you get to like 20 pages of single sentence memories, you're like, I
Right.
probably don't need to do all of this. But without the stories, it's just so I mean you've got to go back to who you are, like as a core human being. Like, who are you born as? And I think I was just born as somebody that is curious and has been curious from the get-go, and is a searcher in general. So I think without the stories, I'd be looking for stories. I mean, I think
Hmm.
that's what I'd still be doing. I'd be searching for stories.
Thank you for engaging the question and thinking about it. I really want to just ask the listeners the same question.
Yeah.
You know, the Mosaic showed me a formula of change, and it said our thoughts become
Mm-hmm.
our words make up our stories,
Yeah.
and our stories create our life.
Right.
And if you're unhappy with any component of that, all you have to do is change any component of that, and everything will change, because you can't have the same stories if your thoughts change, because the words that you would use to tell those stories would be different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wonder, as a listener, who are you without the stories? Like, and are the stories you're telling yourself even true?
Yeah.
I rem- I remember growing up as a kid, everybody said, "Are you from New York?" And my mom took me to New York with her one time to see some friends, and they showed us an area that they thought was up and coming, which was Soho, which was up and coming. But when they showed it to us, it was really Soho. It had so many hoes in it and prostitutes that my mom said, "We can't live here." But somehow in my mind, I had this image that we did live there for a little while,
Right.
and that my mom just said, "No, we can't live that, we can't." But we said we I made up a story that I would tell people, because people thought I was from New York because of my accent, even though I'm from Philly. And I got so tired of saying I'm not. I said, "Yeah, I lived a little while in New York. I lived in Soho when it was Soho," and I told the story of Soho's, and I told it so many times that I actually believed that I lived there. Until
Right.
I was in the midst of the story one time, and I said, "Hold it, hold it. I've been telling this story for 10 years." And I actually believe that I did, but there's no truth. Not one iota of truth is in that story.
Yeah.
We've never lived in Soho. We never did that. That never happened. And I wonder how many stories we tell ourselves that have no truth to them, but we've told them to us over and over again. Can you think of anything like that that's
This
happened to
is
you?
this is a thing that I think about a lot. I This is like fascinating to me. It's actually sort of where the idea for my show came from, is the idea of history and what is true and what's not, and what difference it can possibly make.
Yeah.
Um, in my own life, I had a baseball as a kid that I thought, there's no question in my mind this is true, is that it was uh, from Game 6 of the 1987 World Series. Gary Gaetti of the Minnesota Twins had hit a home run, and I caught it. That was I was certain of that story. But I was 4 years old in 1987. Never been to a World Series game. Gary Gaetti, I checked, did not hit a home run in Game 6 of the 1987 World Series. I don't know where I got it. I don't know how that idea got implanted into my head, but I was certain of it.
Wow.
Um, and that I just think that's a really I mean, I think it points to like the minds of children, right? Like your life is as much a fantasy world as it is a
Yeah.
real physical thing. Um, Yeah, it's fascinating to me. But I think that happens in all of history, like history as a whole, right? Like, I mean, that's what I was saying when the idea for my show, where that came from, is I was reading these history books, right? There's a specific person. His name is, what's his name? Eric something. He writes these almost novelized history books. I don't remember his last name though. Um, and I mean, he'll tell you the weather on the day that Nikola Tesla was strolling through, you know, Yale or whatever, and all this stuff. And I'm like, number one, I mean, I guess there are probably ways to figure out what the weather was on that day. What difference does it make?
Right.
If he was to say it was snowing that day, would it make any difference to me or anybody else? And I mean, maybe it would, and maybe there are ways that it would. Um, but probably not. Probably it wouldn't affect your everyday life.
Yeah.
And that idea was really interesting to me. And like the accuracy of events, what effect that can have, and like the malleability
Yeah.
of the past.
I want to even make it more personal, if I may, for a moment,
Yeah.
because um, the story of the Mosaic is very much my story.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was my hero. I was a mini me before mini me's were even known what they were.
Right.
We would go down to the beach, to the shore, and this every summer, and I would walk and I would hold his ring finger, and I was 4 years old, and he was, probably 50 something years old. And he was a 6 foot version, and I was a 3 foot version of the same person. And so
Yeah.
people would stop and they would take pictures of us or point to us and laugh, or just not maliciously, but just like they couldn't believe that this small version of this taller version looked exactly the same and walked exactly the same and moved exactly the same. And so when he passed away while I was away at camp, and I remember him coming into my room before he went on a trip to leave for. He left on a sales trip a few days before I went to camp, and he
Mm-hmm.
said, "I'm going to come in. I'm going to say goodnight to you. I'm going to hug you. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to tell you how much I love you, and I'm going to tell you I'm leaving early tomorrow morning. So we'll say goodbye, and I'll see you for Visitors Day at camp."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh, come on, Dad. How early are you leaving?" I mean, he said, "Danny, I got to be out the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so don't get up. Don't just relax. Sleep. It's more important you get your rest. Sleep. I'll see you on Visitors Day." I said, "There's no way I'm not going to sleep, and I'm not going to come down and hug you before you go on the trip. I'm going to get up. I'm going to see you. I'm going to jump in your arms. I'm going to hug you. I'll give you a kiss. I'll say have a great trip, and I'll see you later." Well, 4 o'clock came the next morning and left, and I was not awake. And my dad died then 4 weeks later, making love to my mom while I was away at camp.
Wow.
So and I never got to see him on Visitors Day, and I never got to see him again. So rather than believe in a random world where things happen to people for no reason, no apparent reason, and that my hero was taken from me for no reason at all, I made up a story, just like the one of me being in Soho. But this story had more impact on my life. I made up the story that my dad died because I didn't wake up to say goodbye to him. And had I woken up to say goodbye to him, he wouldn't have died.
How
Now,
old were you?
I was 13.
Okay.
So, is there any correlation between me waking up and him dying of a heart attack making love to my mom? Absolutely not. It was 4 weeks later. I mean, there's no rational reason to even think that. But what it did for me is it protected me from a random world where just things could happen at any given moment that had no sense to it.
Yeah.
And so the stories that we make up, I'm less interested in the ones where they're easily, like I lived in Soho, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Or it was snowing when Tesla was walking, who cares?
Yeah.
But the stories that impacted my life, of me trying to take responsibility for something that I wasn't responsible for, and the
Right.
imprint that left on me as a human being, because I didn't want to deal with the world the way it was, which was seemingly random,
Yeah.
are more powerful stories.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah.
Have you So your description of your book, I'm going to ask you a couple questions for a second.
Yes,
Um,
podcast guy.
um, so your description of your book reminds me a lot of kind of a Jonathan Safran Foer kind of thing, right?
I
Have
don't
you
know.
ever
I
read
don't know that.
him?
No, I don't know. I would like to know what he reads. How
Okay.
he reads.
Yeah, he is I mean, when I was in college, he was like the young up and coming hip writer.
Oh, thank you
Very
for thinking I'm young, I'm becoming
very
hip writer.
whimsical. Well, I'm not saying that you're young or hip, but you seem hip enough. I will just
Darn,
leave it
darn.
there. Um, anyway, his stories are very whimsical and searching for the meaning of life. In the
Yes.
same way, it sounds like yours are. He's also telling them from a Jewish American perspective, um, a strong one, which is really powerful and rooted in history and all of that stuff. But anyway, his last novel, I'm not sure his books have aged very well, but I'm excited to read yours. But his last
Thank you.
novel, he had this one part that has stuck with me for a long time, which is he talks a lot about I didn't know that was going to be the last time. Like you don't know. You have no way of
Yeah.
knowing when something is going to be the last time that you do that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a father that's carrying his son asleep on his shoulder up to bed and is regretting that he didn't know that was the last time that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I mean, that made me weep when I
Love
was
that.
reading it because
Love
that
that.
is
Love that
so
idea.
powerful. Um, and that, I mean, that really, your story just now reminds me so much of that.
Yeah.
You just have to live in your moments
Yeah.
and
I
keep
love
them
that
with you.
idea. I love
Yeah,
that idea of I didn't know that this was the last moment. And how would we live if we knew this was the last moment we would do what we're doing?
right.
I've often thought about that, but I've never thought about it from the point of, I mean, and realistically now with the pandemic, there's something. I have a developmentally delayed daughter who lives in a group home,
Yeah.
and I haven't been able to see her for 6 months. We went last week to see her for a few hours for the first time in 6 months, and
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't believe it. And I went thinking, what if this is the last time I get to see her? How long is this pandemic going to go on?
Right.
And we talk to each other on FaceTime every day. In fact, she's going to call me in another 10 minutes. So, because we have a set time every day where she can
Yeah.
call. Um, but that idea of has become more relevant to me now as I'm getting older. What if this is the last time I am going to do this? And how would I want to live this moment if this were the last time I was doing it?
Yeah.
It's such a rich way to live in some ways.
It is. I mean, it lays a lot of pressure on you in a lot of ways, but
Yeah,
if you can learn to live in that moment and to remind yourself, just it doesn't have to be a big thing. You don't have to be a hero in every moment, you know?
yeah.
Like, but just remember.
I love that, and my own personal lean on it. It isn't pressure. It is mindful.
Yeah.
It's like I take so much of my life for granted. I think, well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'll be happier tomorrow, or I'll do something more, or I'll create something that I want to create tomorrow, or I'm tired tonight. I won't do it now because I have tomorrow to do it. But what if I didn't have tomorrow to do it?
Yeah.
What would I do today if I knew I didn't have tomorrow to do it?
Right.
What
You
would
know
you
what?
do to What would you do today if you didn't have tomorrow to do it?
I mean, I would just go pick my kids up and just spend the day with my kids. I mean, last
Yeah,
night, you know, Otis, my oldest son, and I, we have this thing in Fargo called cleanup week, where you can just put all of the stuff you don't want on your boulevard, and then the entire town seemingly drives around and takes what they want. It's really
wow,
like a beautiful, like communal. It's like the last true communal, unregulated experience that
I love
that
that.
you've got. But we walked and we just ran from thing to thing, seeing what we could find. And he was just, I mean, he's so great because he'll tell you like, this is the greatest night of my life. He says that all the time, and it's such a reminder to like enjoy things. But yeah, I would spend the time with them. That's just being with them,
Yeah.
That's all I would do.
What would you say the most valuable thing you've learned from listening to someone else is?
Um, I'm just gonna answer this from a sobriety standpoint. This is the this is a podcast thing. This is a podcast that I listen to. John Roderick. It's called Roderick on the Line. He is a recovering alcoholic. He's been sober for a long time. And the story that he told that really stuck with me is a humorous story, but I found a lot of knowledge in it when I was getting sober. Is that when you go as an alcoholic, when you go to a baseball game, you drink, right? And you say to yourself, yeah, of course I'm going to drink. I'm at a baseball game. That's what you do at a baseball game. You drink, you get drunk. But then when you're sober and you go to a baseball game, you realize very quickly that like 10% of the people there are drunk
Yeah.
and that nobody wants them to be.
Yeah.
Nobody's excited to have them around. And it's so eye-opening. Like everybody there is just living their life and trying to enjoy their time with their family and their friends. And there's this 10% that's not quite getting that. And I'm just so thankful not to be in that 10% anymore.
I love that.
Like that is really just indicative of the whole thing for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
We're coming to the point, unfortunately, where we close down.
Right.
But I want to give you, you've said a lot and you've shared so much already. If you had 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
to share with a world that's listening to you without any objection, what is it you'd want to say?
The world is such seemingly such a mess from on a macro level. It really feels that way, especially with social media. You see the world, it feels like the world is burning down, and in some places it literally is.
Yeah.
But for me personally, when I am able to push that to the background and just see the things that are actually in front of my face, the world is still a very beautiful and meaningful and wonderful place. And you can find all these wonderful people and have all these great experiences, and just try to focus on that, but be mindful of what that means. Because you've got to be a thinking, kind person, or you can't even have that in front of you. You are going to meld with the awfulness of the macro if you're not a thinking, kind person. So just try to think and try to be kind. That's it.
I love that. Reid, thank you so much for being here. How do people get in touch with you? I know we're going to have in the show notes all of your website, your podcast, your social media. But what's the best one way for people to contact you from those resources?
I'm on Twitter at Exuberant Pod. That is the best place to get in touch with me.
Perfect. And you'll be able to see all the other links on the show notes when we post the show.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for being here with us. I want to tell you what a pleasure it is to have taken this opportunity to get to know you a little bit. I would love to have more conversations with you. I enjoy you from the essence of who I am to the essence of who you are. I just enjoy you. What a pleasure to have this time together. And for those of you who are listening, I want to thank you for being here with us, for listening to the show, for sharing the show with each other, with the people that you like. If you like a show and you share it with people you like, isn't that a beautiful thing? Isn't that what we do? We go out to a restaurant, we like it, we say all to our friends, hey, you gotta go to this place, it was great. Well, if you like a show, why not share it with your friends in the same way? And I want to leave you all with this challenge that I leave every single time in every single show, because I hope you will do it, and I hope you'll take me up on it. Go up to someone you don't know and just ask them how they're doing. and just listen to them. Just let them tell you how they are. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to change them. You don't need to help them. You don't need to convert them. All you need to do is just open up your heart and be there for another human being. You have no idea what the impact of that might be. We live in a world of strangers. And often, all too often, it looks like a strange world. When we can take a stranger into our arms, like I have in here in this show. How long have I been with Reid? Just a few moments. He came in as a stranger, someone I had never met before, someone I had no idea who he was. He goes out as a friend. When strangers become friends, suddenly we live in a friendly world because the people that are around us are now friends, not strangers. Why not make this a friendly world? Reid, is there anything you want to say before we go out?
I just want to say thank you. This was really great, and I love what you're doing, and I'm really glad we had a chance to talk.
It's such an honor to have you, and thank you so much. It means a lot to me that you would say that. So I really appreciate you. So for those of you listening, we're closing up. Until the next stranger comes into this room, do me a favor. Be kind to each other. Be inquisitive. Be curious. Be friendly. Take a few moments to find out who someone is and just be there for them. Don't be strangers. Be friends. Make this world a friendly place. Until that moment when the next stranger comes in, be kind. Ciao.